go.
Hi everyone, it's Deb Morrissey from Huckleberry's Fabrics, and we're going to try a new demo today since we've been missing out on our wonderful demos with all of you. I have got the Clearly Perfect slotted trimmer, and they come two to a package in this size, and there are two larger sizes that follow this as well, but I'm going to show you we can do up to 6.5 inches on these ones. So they are working with your half square triangles, so you don't have to open them up and square them up. They are going to be perfect every time. So here's the steps that we follow. We mark our diagonal line, and you can use any marking utensil you would like. You can use your friction markers, a disappearing marker, a regular pen. You're going to be cutting on that line, so it won't matter. Or the other trick I like is going to your ironing board, folding it in half. And these are gonna, if they're not absolutely perfect, it's still gonna work okay, because you're going to be stitching, using that straight line as your guide for stitching. And if it's too raised, you take it back just quickly, and it flattens it out. And look, I still have a nice crease line that I can follow with my stitching line, okay? So once you've got those together, you're gonna stitch 1/4 inch on either side. This line needs to be straight because that's the line that we're going to use to mark from. Then you're going to take them, and you can actually use these rulers to cut right on that line. Again, if you're not perfect here, not to worry. Doesn't have to be right down the middle, just close, because you're not going to be using that cut line. You're using the stitch line for your mark. These were 5-inch squares. So we're going to pick up the ruler, and I've got my arrow on there so you can see. It's 4.5 inches that we're squaring it to, and there's the finished size. So that's the marks you're getting. And the dark stitch line here is going to sit on your stitch line, just like that. And I can scoot it back and forth because it's more about the stitch line at this point for these squares. And then I'm going to take it and cut on either side. So that's creating the 4-inch square, kind of backwards. And then we're going to take, and there's a slot here, hence the slotted trimmer. Go in sideways so you don't, just like the stripology, if you've got those rulers, you want to go in sideways. Lift this up, and I have got a perfect 4.5 inch half square done. Normally I would be taking this, pressing it, grabbing my square ruler, putting my diagonal line, oops, here I'm going to turn it this way. My diagonal line square would sit on the diagonal line of that, and I would have to cut 2 sides, turn my ruler, and recut 2 sides. So I just did that lickety-split, and it's perfect, and I'm not having to line anything up. One other thing, you can press, what I like to do is press to one side first. So depending on your project, you might want them open or to one side. Regardless, I still like to press it one way, because if I do go open, I can go like that and then easily get in with my iron, like that. And that's perfectly flat, 4.5 inches done. The other way I can do it is if I'm at my sewing table, I can finger press that line, and then I have this. It's a seam roller. It's So Emma, so Lori Holt's brand of stuff, and I can go like this. And I've been using this lots lately. You'll see some samples another time of triangle blocks. And look how well that does it. And I can take it harder. And then, oops, I hadn't trimmed this one yet. That's too funny. Before trimming, I hadn't trimmed this one yet, so I would go back and use my ruler to trim that first on the line, and then I would go ahead and I'll recut that afterwards and press open. So the seam, this is awesome if you're doing lots of little triangles and you're sitting at you've got a mat beside you. Don't do it on the bed of your sewing machine. It will put pressure on it and you will probably break it. And I was getting, that's from experience, not that I broke it, but I was noticing it bending a little bit. So it's on a mat right beside my table. That works awesome. So that's with the, so you start off for the half squares, start off with a 5-inch square. You're gonna get a 4.5 inch square and a 4-inch finish. So you're going to start off with 1/2 inch bigger than you want. So we've got, these are the sizes that these rulers will do. You can start with 2-inch squares, 3-inch squares, 4-inch squares, 5 and 7. And that's going to work with the 1/2 inch size. Because you're going to square them either to, you see the lines, 1.5, 2.5, 3.5, 4.5, 5.5, 6.5. And then we've got these here. So from 6.5 down to 2.5, and then you're going to use the even number 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, which finish at 1/2 inch, and these ones finish at a full size. And so if I just open it up.
So if you're using a 5-inch square, that's going to give you really a 4-inch finish.
Yep. To take away the inch. So there's basically the size, and then we would trim this down all the way down to this little one that you would get, following exactly the same cutting I showed you. There's slits along for each one, all the way up the ruler. And what I did do on the back is I've taken little bits of the tape, now I've forgotten the name of it, that we have here that I put on the backs of all my rulers that don't have grip, just because it would slide around a bit, and that's all I needed, placing it in areas that weren't interfering with any of the markings on the lines. So we do have the other 2 larger rulers, and I believe they go up to 10.5 inches. So they'll carry on from here. So if you were into the larger ones, you can get the rulers that coordinate with that. So thanks everyone. Just to show you some projects with 1/2 squares. This is a 1/2 square triangle made with a charm pack and a black grunge. And so every charm was matched with a black grunge, and then I laid them out, just played with them. I was able to get the oranges in one area and the darks. And then leftovers, I did the pillow and turned them around. So there's the 1/2 square, but they're all turned in to form the dark center. And these ones have a different layout, which I'll have it printed up for people who are wanting that. These ones are charms as well, playing with those. These are 1/2 squares. There was in the pack, there's 2 bird ones and 2 of these, so I was able to pair them up to get actually the nice centers. Then I made the glitter grunge red and another grunge background for the red stars. The black ones are done the same way, and then these are 4.5 inch squares to fill in the black. So you can play with these. If you have a charm pack that doesn't have the 2 of each, you'd kind of get a look maybe like that, where you'd have 4 different charms forming the center of your blocks. And again, if you've got 42 squares, you're going to get 10 blocks formed from that one. And that was using the Cardinal Noel line. We also have this in a layer cake. And I would also play with this with layer cakes as well. And I'm going to show you one other technique after. This one here is another charm pack, Cultivate Kindness. And it's perfect for this time. I might even quilt some words around here like be kind, be calm, such as a memorial of this year. This one is going through, I paired up darks with lights. So nothing else was used except this charm pack. So that's the complete, I only had 2 squares left over, and I laid them out. Wasn't sure how I was going to do it, but I kind of got a color grouping that I was able to form. And occasionally I got, like the yellow ended up here, even though it was a dark color here, I had to fit it into one of the lights. And as you know, with matching up charm packs and darks and lights, they're never even. And this one here is using the 1/2 square to make 1/4 square triangles. And essentially, and the blocks behind them actually were made with the zoology charms, which I'd forgotten about that. And then this is the zoology panel here by Ginger Burr, who I love all of her stuff. So your 1/2 square triangles are essentially taking 2 1/2 square triangles, but I've matched up the background with the color and the color with the background, marking the center again, and you're going to sew and cut. So there's my line, I've got a 1/4 inch on each side. So when you peel it back, there is your perfect, once you've used the slotted trimmer to cut the edges and cut those points off. And you can also do it with a 1/2 square triangle and a solid, your background, and that's how you get your 3 triangle. There you go. And that's what I actually had to do for my top pieces. Of course, this is just the top part of a quilt, so the bottom is not matching it, but the top and the bottom will have a block like that to finish it off, so I didn't have it going off into space.
Cool.
So that was sort of fun. Now the other thing you can do is, for those of you who like the strip tube technique, you can do it this way. So these were 2.5 inch strips, and you sew the 1/4 inch on either side. Then it's not going to work the same way as 2 squares that are 2.5 inches though. So that's my 2.5 inch square, and I've stitched on either side, but I'm not going to get the 2.5 inches. I've got no fabric under there. Whereas on here, if I go down to the 2.5 inches, I've got lots. So I can actually go, and this is where I would audition sizes. If I do all my strips the same width, then I have to figure out which ruler. And look at this one. I'm actually going to use, and see these stitches? These will unpick, so you don't worry about those. That one came from here. Okay, so I followed those lines and cut the edges off, and then I wrote this down, 2.5 inch strips, 3 inch square, or 2.5 inch finished. So essentially, your strip size is going to be your finished 1/2 square once you're done. So 2.5 inch strip gave me the 2.5 inch square, and that was just plain. But caution, when you're doing this, these cuts are on the bias. So that means all of those 4 edges are bias. When we do it this way, my bias runs this way. So when I cut,
You get to see the slotted trimmer.
and now this is the little one. So the 2.5 inch square, I think I need my other ruler, which is there. There we go. So the 2 inch line is on there, and I'm going to cut and trim in there. Slowly go the wrong way. Angle in and cut again. Now remember, my bias ran this way, so all of my 4 edges are, okay, and again, I could go back to my little, show you how well that works. Where did I put it? There it is. Look at that. Isn't that cool? That means you're not getting up from your ironing machine when you're doing these little guys. Sewing machine, ironing machine. Wish there was an ironing machine. Maybe that's my...
Well, there it is.
what I know machine. For. There you go. So that's the difference between these ones, okay? You're looking at this all being straight edge, and this one is all bias. So the suggestion is, if you want, because any strip tubes don't tell you to do this, you could cut those on the bias first of all, so that you are going to have all the your square, or your cross grain and your straight grain. Then you won't have the stretch as much. This one won't have as much stretch, this one will. So you just have to be cautious when you're doing these and sewing them, that you're really careful sewing those. And you don't want to do, if you're unpicking stuff, be gentle, don't.
This is where I'd like to use best press for the bias edges.
And that is a suggestion here.
Yeah.
Heavy starch actually was even recommended for that one. And the other one is, some of you like this technique, where you sew so I've just randomly had fabric that just fit those sizes. So this is a 9 inch square. I have no idea what my halves are going to be. I sewed a 1/4 inch all the way around, and now I need a ruler. What's that? I'll do it this way. So I think I can, oh, look at that. See, I've got a straight edge here. That worked out fine. I'm going to be able to cut it in half that way. Another little tip for you guys. And now if I put those on top of each other, now it wasn't perfect. I'm not worrying about that, because we're going to use the ruler. So I've got them cut both ways diagonally. Now, let's see which ruler is going to work. So I started with the big 2 large 9-inch squares. Okay, so this one, there is my 6-inch line. If I put that on the seam there, I think that's going to be my best one. That was pretty lucky. So the 6-inch one versus, I can go smaller if you're needing something smaller. I could go, see the 5.5 would fit, but look when I will go up to the 6.5, it's not going to fit, which is a 6-inch finish, 6.5-inch square. So I'm probably going to be most efficient use, and maybe you can see it better on this one. There's my 6-inch line and around. Okay, so you can decide on, as long as all your blocks are 9 inches, then you decide which one is the best one for you to use, and then you can cut them all and they're all the same. So, having said that, a 10-inch square sewn together would probably work really well, which is your layer cake, would work really well with this ruler, because I could use the 6.5-inch line. Or you could possibly bump up to the next ruler. But if you got this set, I think 6.5-inch would work perfect, and you'd get 4 6.5-inch half squares from 2 layer cakes. Whether it would be a layer cake, say 2 layer cakes, fabrics together, or a background with one of the colors. As soon as you add a background in, you can do a lot more patterns, and it makes it larger, of course. So that is how we use a slotted trim ruler.
You want to do one more with the slotted trim on that one?
Sure. On this one?
Yeah.
To cut it. So I'll put it underneath. And this is the nice part. You can, as long as you've got them all the same, and I'm going to see how unstraight my sewing line was. So the sewing line is important. You're going to find sometimes you cut off less or more, depending. And on this one, look at that. We use the outside. Oh, I haven't done this one yet. That's your slot. Is your little, and this is a great thing too. If you've got little, so we're working with 45 degrees, you can cut off other angles on other 45-degree projects using this ruler, setting it on top. There I am underneath. Switch over. So this is just a scant amount, and I'm going to find some of them are going to be more. Oops. No, I got as much as I can. So that one, let's just see what this one works like. Just to show you, remember I said how I wasn't very even? Now this one is going to have a little more on those edges, because when I was cutting them diagonally, I told you it wasn't quite straight, but this straightens everything out. And the little notch at the end, and then you are good, and you've got your perfect 6-inch square. They're 6.5 inches, which will finish at 6. And you get 4 of those from 2 9-inch squares.
Very nice.
Lots of fun playing. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Yay! Applause.
Miss seeing you all.